Welcome back to Co-op Radio 102.7 FM CFRO. This is Monday Brown Bagger. I'm going to be archiving this on my website of www.angus-mcleod.com. McLeod spelled M-C-L-E-O-D. In the past, we've had a hip-hop artist out of New York on by the name of Truth Now. We've welcomed this gentleman back on as our second guest now, and he's going to tell us about how he's had an encounter with some people who are Knight Templars. Hello, Truth
What's
Now.
up?
Thank you
How you
so
doing,
much
Reggie?
for coming back on.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
And can you tell us that the encounter you had? Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to have Kevin Annette sitting here too, and Kevin Annette is he knows an awful lot about the Knight Templar. So I thought I'd quickly have you fill in the listening audience and share
Sure.
with Kevin and I what happened, and then I'll get Kevin to say some stuff.
Okay, cool. So it's kind of interesting. My dad, he works in government. I work in government a little bit on like the really low-level stuff. And he sets me up to take these guys to John F. Kennedy International Airport. And he doesn't know what they're doing. I don't know what they're doing. I get in the car. I start telling them that I think, this isn't like the first thing I say or anything, but we sort of alluded to the fact that that the UN was doing a meeting on Haiti and the future of Haiti before the earthquake even happened, right? So then the earthquake is in the middle of the context of that. We've already got UN troops, 20,000 American troops, sort of an occupation. So I alluded to the fact that I thought it was like an inside job, that, that whether there was underground detonation or whatever, or HARP, the High Auroral Research Program in Alaska. And he's like, oh, that's conspiracy. And I was like, right. I am a conspiracy theorist. I admit that. And he was like, oh, you're going to love us. I was like, why? He's like, well, we're Templars. And I thought he was joking because, Templars, like, you normally think, oh, they became the Masons or they became the Illuminati, like they don't still exist. But you can Google the Sovereign Military Order of the Temple of Jerusalem, and that's what these guys are. So I was driving them, like, I knew what their flight was, but I didn't know, like, what it was about or anything or who they were. But they were going to Tel Aviv to go and have, like, a very, fancy schmancy little crusade. And I just thought that was, like, kind of the bee's knees, because meanwhile you've got, like, King Conspiracy driving the two guys who sit in on, like, massive world government meetings, and they got into that with me a little bit, talking about how the population of the planet was 1 billion over what it should be, and how global warming and Copenhagen were just a plot to seize power for a world government. And they were really honest and really nice guys, not like the kind of people, who sit at the top of the pyramid, but somewhere a little bit higher up than normal, average Joe and Tom and everybody. So it was really interesting, and I'm really happy to have met them. They're just like really nice guys.
So what else did actually they share with you that that they were talking about that our listeners may not be aware of at this time?
Sure. Basically, I think your listeners are probably some of the better informed in the entire continent. But we got into a little bit of the history of the Templars. They kept basically with sort of the main historical paradigm, which is that they were, these protectors of the roads in ancient Jerusalem, and that they were invited by either the person sitting on Solomon's throne. And I asked them, I was like, well, so you guys are you're staying at the sort of the little temple hotel, back in the day. And were you digging underneath? Was there an excavation to have like the secrets, potentially the Holy Grail or whatever whatever they made that Indiana Jones movie about? And they sort of chuckled and they were like, yeah, we don't tell you guys that. But I think that on the surface it's a very nice, upstanding Christian organization, and that that they sort of run in the circle with more elites than maybe they normally are. But they definitely were pretty specific about what their goal was in terms of keeping a Christian presence in the Holy Land.
And also, Kevin, would you like to jump in right now and share what you've actually heard of the Knight Templars?
Well, my understanding is, when you study the stuff in church circles, you're given kind of a traditional line that, well, they were eradicated in 1307, and that the church simply took over their wealth and everything. But then other stuff I've read is that, in fact, they didn't die, and some of the early banks in Italy were founded with Templar money, and so there's an early connection between the Templars and some of the financial elites in Europe, for example.
Absolutely. I mean, that lines up perfectly with what we would see later with the P.2 Lodge and just the strength of Scottish Rite Masonry in Italy, because as we know, the Templars found a very nice little haven in Scotland where they could build sort of more occultic temples than the sort of churches and monasteries that they were purported to be.
It's interesting. There's a good book by David Yallop called In God's Name about the murder of John Paul I in 1978, the Pope. And one of the things, of course, that caused him to be poisoned by some of the cardinals was that he had ordered investigation into the Vatican Bank and its ties with P2 and the mafia and various multinational corporate interests. And one of the things that came out in the course of that is that there was a whole group of cardinals in the Curia who were all Freemasons, even though the Catholic Church had banned Freemasonry, according to its rules. You're not allowed to be a Catholic and a Freemason. And part of that, this P2 organization its name kept cropping up. And Enrico Gelli, I think his name was, and a bunch of other people who were pretty high-financed, people in the world. And so that the information is out there. It's just really a question, I think, of integrating it and showing that these people may go by different names and maybe false names in order to cover up their real activities, but we're really talking about the same thing. Octopus at the end of the tentacles, so to speak.
Yeah, this one Templar that I spoke with, I'm just going to, sort of protect their anonymity, so to speak. He spoke to me specifically about the Illuminati, and what he was saying is that he's like, it's a conspiracy theory, but I was a Rockefeller protege at one point in my life. I mean, this is a man who came up through West Point. There's like a very decorated soldier as well as being a Templar. So he was telling me, he was just like, it's just friends of friends. You just got to follow the money. And without being prompted really for any of this information, he mentioned George Soros immediately as being like, sort of king fat cat, at least in the corporatocracy.